In the last stream, we were working on setting up our newest multi-block over here, the Dimensional Infuser, which is now finally allowing us to make gold dust, which we can, of course, smelt into gold ingots, which is exactly what we did right at the end of the last episode, using the gold to make things like the energy upgrades for our mechanism machines, therefore massively reducing the amount of power required when we fully speed these up using all of the 8 speed upgrades. And so now this machine uses about 1/10 as much power as it was using previously, which means going forward we should be able to make even more installers for all of these machines, as well as even more speed upgrades to make these machines much quicker without using all of our power. Now, since the end of the last stream, what I've gone ahead and done down on this lower level is I have gone ahead and set up the beginning of our centralized lava production system, which is something I mentioned a little bit in the last episode. The idea here is very similar to what we're doing with water, where we're producing all the water in one location and then using XNet to distribute that water all around the base. Right here, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're making all of our lava in one centralized location. I've gone ahead and thrown down an XNet connector underneath the lava tank here, and in our controller, if we create a new fluid channel for lava, we can now use the XNet connectors around the base to distribute that lava without having to put down a new cobblestone miner and then provide that with cobblestone and then pipe the lava manually every single time a new machine needs lava. And of course, going forward, if we need to increase lava production, we can just throw down even more cobblestone melters right here, as opposed to having to add them wherever they're needed, which is going to be useful, I think, especially given that what we're going to work on today is the building of a couple of these thermal evaporation towers. So if we look in the Techopolis guidebook, there is a page on the thermal evaporation tower. This is a multi-block from mechanism that's going to allow us to turn certain fluids into certain other fluids. For us, we need to start by turning water into hot water. This is something we can do by smelting a bucket of water. We did it right at the beginning of the pack, but going forward for automation purposes, I do think it's going to be worth getting a thermal evaporation plant to turn water into hot water. Then we need to turn that hot water into brine. Then we need to turn that brine into liquid lithium, and then finally we need to turn that liquid lithium into liquid sulfuric acid. All of those resources are going to be necessary as we go forward. Some are used for certain crafts, like the FLUORITE here requires the brine. If we check the next chapter of the quest book, we need lithium, which we get from that lithium. Then we need sulfur, which we can get from the sulfuric acid. And so you can see we do need every step of the chain, and of course every next step requires the previous step. And so we are going to have to build, I believe, 4 at the minimum of these thermal evaporation multi-blocks. Each one is made up of thermal evaporation blocks, a thermal evaporation controller, and then a couple of thermal evaporation valves. But the core of this is, of course, the thermal evaporation block. It's used in the making of both the controller and the valves. And to make it, we need 4 steel and 1 reinforced machine casing. And that's where things get a little bit expensive, because the reinforced machine casing is what we were making in the last episode. And to make more of those, we need to get even more of the obsidian glow ingots that we were making last time, as well as more of the dimensional dust, which we were getting from teleportation cores. So I think we're going to need well over 100 reinforced machine casing to build kind of 4 of the smallest thermal evaporation plants that we can. And this, by the way, I believe is the smallest. You can actually build these up to 18 blocks tall if you want to process even more water into hot water into brine, brine into lithium, and lithium into sulfuric acid, which we're probably going to want to do at some point in the future. But for now, we're going to start out with the 4 smallest ones and upgrade as we go. Before we do that, there are a few other things that I want to talk about. The first is that we have upgraded the pack, and in the newest version of the pack, you can now use these facades that we've been using on everything on XNet cable, like this. The one downside to this is that you can't see the XNet cable through the facade when you're holding an XNet cable like you can with the facades from XNet, but the Twitch chat has pointed out to me that there is a wrench from the facades mod, and that wrench, which is super easy, it's just iron and nuggets, allows you to right click and it shows you all of the pipes that are inside of all of the facades that we currently have. And then you can just right click again to hide them, and it's back to normal. And so I think going forward, I am going to stick to using the one kind of facade for all of our pipes. It does make them ever so slightly worse, specifically when you're holding an X-Net cable, but I think in general, just being able to carry this wrench around inside of our traveler's sack means that we can just right-click when we need to, see where the cables are, and then right-click again to hide them. On top of that, the modifiers, which we've been using over here in our simple equipment modifier, have kind of been buffed. So before, the efficiency modifier required 5,400 millibuckets to get one level of efficiency. That has now been buffed. It only requires 1,350, and so it should now be much easier for us to level up our pixel. On top of that, a modifier that previously didn't have a recipe now does have a recipe, and that is the speed modifier. This is a modifier that is able to be placed onto leggings and boots. And so, real quick, let me make some iron leggings and iron boots. We could make diamond versions of these if we wanted to, but I don't really think we're going to be using them for combat. I think we're really just using them as a way to get this speed modifier. The speed modifier does require sugar in order to be used, and so we are going to have to get a fair bit more sugarcane as well. Thankfully, we can, of course, kind of hijack one of these and throw the sugarcane in. Another thing that I didn't mention last time, but now that we have access to gold, we do also now have access to the kind of upgraded speed modifiers from the Cloche mod. Up until now, we've just been using the fixed speed upgrades, and these just increase the speed of the Cloche by a fixed number of ticks, either 200, 400, or 600, depending on the tier of the upgrade. With the percentage speed upgrades here, we can reduce the amount of time taken by 20, 40, and 60%, which can be actually really useful and can massively increase the speed of the Cloche. For example, to make the first tier here, we need an upgrade base, which is easy enough, and then we just need 4 clocks, which is going to use a little bit of our redstone, and by a little bit, I do of course mean more than we have. Thankfully, we can get even more silver here, kind of crush that down into even more silver dust. That would happen even faster if we had another installer, and I'm assuming we can probably go all the way up to advanced tier. We could even, if we wanted to, look at going to elite and ultimate fairly soon, because we can now make those fairly easily as well. We'll turn auto sort on to make that nice and quick. This is going to use the full 10,000 redstone flux per tick because we've yet to make any energy upgrades for that machine, which is something we should definitely do sooner rather than later. But the idea here is that right now this is taking 200 ticks to make one sugarcane. I believe that with the right combination of percentage upgrades and fixed upgrades, we can bring that down to 40 ticks. I've not been able to find a better combination that can get it any lower than that, but getting it down to 40 ticks does mean that we can effectively quintuple 5 times the speed of this Cloche and make anything inside of it 5 times faster than we currently can make it. So let me grab more gold. Let's make one more clock. That's going to get us the first percentage speed upgrade. That's only going to reduce it by 20%. And the way this works, by the way, is it reduces the time by the percentage first. You'll see it says percentage effects happen before fixed effects. And so if, for example, we put in the tier 1 upgrade here, it's going to bring this down by 20% from 1,200 ticks to 960, and then you can add in, for example, the fixed 600, and it's going to take it down to 360. We then couldn't add the tier 2 upgrade here because 400 would be too much, and you still can't go below 0. But if we were to upgrade this to a tier 2, which is just 4 diamonds, we could then also upgrade it to a tier 3 if we wanted to, which is just 4 obsidian. That's going to now reduce the amount in here by 60%. So that's going to bring it down initially to 480. We could then put in the tier 2, and now it's down to just 80. And that already is more than twice as fast as the 200 that we had a second ago. I do think, though, that we can go yet further if we get another tier 1 percentage speed upgrade, because you can put multiple percentage upgrades in, and the way that works is it just adds the effect together. So they don't really stack multiplicatively, they stack additively. So if you put in a tier 3 and a tier 1, the tier 3 does 60, the tier 1 does 20, that gives you a total of an 80% reduction, and so it goes down from 1,200 to just 240, and then if you put in the tier 1 fixed upgrade, that takes it down from 240 to just 40, and that gives you 1 sugarcane, or 1 of whatever it is you're growing, every 2 seconds, which is, I think, the fastest you can get it. I did a little bit of tinkering. I've yet to be able to find a combination of these upgrades that gets it down to 20 ticks or lower. If you know of any, please do let me know in the comments. But for now, over here, if we craft our sugarcane into sugar, we should be able to go ahead and throw a speed upgrade onto leggings, and I actually don't know if the effect stacks on both pieces of armor. I also don't know how well it stacks with our current speed curio that we have, but we're about to find out. So with speed 1, if I put this on, that hopefully gives us like even more speed, although it kind of looks like we've not gained any speed. That's fine. Let's try adding speed 2. It might only be the case that once we get past speed 2, do we actually get any kind of effect? So once we're at speed 3, that then takes us up, interestingly, from speed 2 to speed 4. Let me get rid of the speed curio, though. Does the speed curio now kind of not do anything? It looks like it might not do anything. That's fine. We don't necessarily need to carry it around, I guess, if we don't need it. But the good news here is we can go even further because we're only on level 3 and we can go up to level 5. I am interested in whether or not it stacks, though. So I'm going to also do the same here with the boots and see if we can get even more speed. The good news here is that it looks like these do stack. You'll see that we go actually from speed 6 to speed 7 by just having speed 1 on the boots and speed 5 on the leggings. And so I do think that we're going to be able to get a lot of speed if we also put speed 5 on the boots. Alright, so I've gone ahead and upgraded this all the way to speed 5. So this is currently speed 6 with just the leggings. And then if we upgrade that with the boots, we now go even faster, to the point where it just says speed. I don't know if that's supposed to be speed 10 or speed 11 or what, but we are definitely faster than we were before. Again, unfortunately, it doesn't really seem to have much of an effect on the flight speed. That seems to be about the same, but we can definitely run quicker than we could previously, which is always good. It's nice to have that upgrade. Apparently, there's also a step assist upgrade as well that we could look at making. That requires 4 sticky pistons. I actually don't know if we have what it takes to make slime. It looks like we can make it with clay and biomass. I think biomass is just the biofuel. Yeah, so we could potentially do that to get the step assist upgrade. Speaking of the infusing factory, though, what I think we should do here is if we're going to make the thermal evaporation plant, which I think I'm going to put downstairs because that, of course, gives us a lot of vertical room to make them taller in the future. Like I mentioned, you can go up to 18 blocks tall, and from what I've heard in the Twitch chat, we're going to need to be using a lot of the liquids from the thermal evaporation chambers, and so it's likely that we might need to make them that tall at some point in the not-so-distant future. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get some silicon cooking over here. I'm going to get the calculation press with the soda squats going over here, and that's, of course, to allow us to make even more of the teleportation cores, so that we can, of course, make even more of the reinforced machine casing for those thermal evaporation plants. And on top of that, of course, we need more obsidian ingots as well. For these, the glowstone is not bad at all. We already have glowstone automated over here. The trickier bit is the obsidian and the osmium, both of which we are going to need in abundance to make this, because of course all of this is done in the osmium compressor, and refined obsidian needs obsidian. So that's one of the reasons why I did set up the centralized lava production down here, because one thing I do want to do is get another XNet connector and place that over on our obsidian making alloy kiln, this guy right here. I'm also going to go ahead and do away with this basic mechanical pipe that's currently running obsidian all the way around to the advanced technium setup. Instead, what I want to do here is I want to go ahead and kind of get rid of this pipe. And then we can also get rid of this now, I think, as well, and kind of move this cobblestone melter over to the other cobblestone melters, and we can replace that entirely with just the one XNet connector. We can also get rid of these as well, because we can also just hook this up to our pre-existing centralized water setup. I actually think speed infinity might be a bit too fast. I think I need to bring it back down. Speed 6 might be a better middle ground. I think that having speed 5 on both the leggings and the boots is maybe actually a little too fast, or I'm overshooting more often than not, which is really not what I'm after. Let me go ahead and quickly run this over to our XNet setup. And once we've hooked that up, which was harder than it seemed because there were quite a few pipes in the way. There was like one here, and one here. And one of the pipes already had another pipe going under it. This one right here was kind of already in the way. So we've done some janky pipe rerouting, but we should now have access to that alloy kiln. And so over here, we should be able to go ahead and kind of name this lava source, like that. And then inside of here, we can use our new channel to extract from lava source and to insert into the alloy kiln. Nice. And so now if we go over here, we should see lava being sent around into the alloy kiln. And it is. Nice. We can also then, of course, go ahead and do the exact same thing on the water channel, this one right here, just set that to insert as well, and now it's going to insert both the water and the lava into this alloy kiln, thus automating the production of obsidian. And so what I want to do here is I want to quickly grab my solidifier that's currently making obsidian. We'll steal that. Of course, we're going to kind of fully get rid of this pipe going forward. And then back over here, let me also grab a storage drawer out of my traveler sack here. And then let's do something like this. We want to extract from here the molten obsidian. We're going to, of course, set this to extract like that. That's going to pump the molten obsidian into the solidifier. Then we're going to go ahead and turn that into blocks of obsidian. And then we just need to extract from there into a storage drawer. And for now, I'll place that storage drawer probably right about there. And we can, of course, connect that up to our system with an inventory connector to allow our system to access all of the obsidian that we're going to back up in here. We do, of course, want to make sure that we put a storage downgrade into there so we only hold 64. This does mean that for a little while, we're not going to be making obsidian to send round to our advanced technium production. I think that's fine. Over here, we do have 16 more, and it's also backed up, of course, with even more molten obsidian, so that shouldn't be a problem for us. And of course, if we wanted to, we do actually have quite a bit of molten obsidian inside of these pipes. We've got 66 buckets worth. We do want to make sure that we kind of connect that up to this simple solidifier, at least temporarily, so that we can get all of the liquid out of there. After we've connected it up, then we can go ahead and look at kind of breaking the rest of the pipe and getting rid of it. Because then what I would like to do is I'd like to use XNet as well to move the molten obsidian from where it's currently being made back around to that advanced technium machine, which again, we can do with just that one connector that we already have. So let's do this. That's going to go ahead and make obsidian. We should have more than enough molten obsidian to back up on a stack. We are going to back up on 2 stacks because there's also going to be 64 in here. That's completely fine. But then what we're going to do is down here, we're going to set up yet another fluid channel. And you can see now why I kind of wanted to dedicate this to fluids. We're then going to use this over here, and we're going to set that to extract. So we're going to extract from the alloy kiln, and then we're going to put another XNet connector onto the side of the advanced technium machine over here and set that to insert so that we can send the molten obsidian around automatically. All right, so not too long later, and I fully emptied out the mechanical pipe that was running all the way along to our advanced technium machine. I've also run a nice long XNet cable all the way around to our pre-existing setup. And so now we should be pretty much good to go. I've also thrown down the inventory connector, so the obsidian is now available in our system. So over here, if we type in obsidian, we have access to the obsidian that is in that drawer. So now the final piece of the puzzle should just be down here using XNet on our new channel. This is for molten obsidian to move that liquid from the alloy kiln into the advanced machine frame, which I cannot help but notice does not seem to be showing up on the network. Have I missed a cable somewhere along the line here? I have. I've only run it like halfway. And a quick pipe fix later, we can now hit insert, and so we should see that molten obsidian being moved around, if it's available, into the machine. Right now, we are kind of not making advanced technium because I've turned this off. If I remove that redstone torch, it is going to start using our lead again to make Pallas crystals. For now, that's probably fine. We do have 1700 lead backed up in our network, so I think we're okay. It might burn through it real quick if we turn this on again, but just to kind of see if it works, we'll turn it on. That's going to make some Pallas crystals. That's going to start making more advanced technium, and we should hopefully see more molten obsidian making its way into here. Of course, that's only really going to happen once we back up over here, because for now, all of the extra molten obsidian is being turned into regular obsidian. Once this fully backs up, that's when we'll start backing up in here, and that's when it should start sending the molten obsidian around into the advanced technium machine. The good news, though, and the reason we did all of that, of course, is that we can now go ahead and use all of that obsidian in the making of these Obsidiglo ingots. And so what I'm going to do, I am going to take these calculation processes, which is more than enough, I think. That's enough to make quite a few of these teleportation cores, 16 in total. We are going to need more atomic alloys as well. Speaking of the atomic alloys, I think one thing I am going to do here, if we have the resources, is make a couple more of these basic infusing factories. The idea here is that we currently have this one down and it has obsidian inside of it. I could clear the obsidian, but I think going forward, it's going to make a bit more sense if we just have a couple of infusing factories. It definitely doesn't look as good, and I guess we could shimmy these over and put them down on the ground if we wanted to. But my thought process is that we can have an infusing factory kind of for each tier of resource. And so I can somewhat safely grab all my enriched redstone and kind of throw it into, say, this top one, like this. That's going to go ahead and fill up, and now going forward, if I need to make anything with enriched redstone, I can just use this metallurgical infuser. Same with the next one down. If we wanted one that has diamond in it, we could take the diamonds, run those through the enrichment chamber to get our enriched diamonds, and then just throw those into here. And again, if ever we need to do something that requires enriched diamonds, we don't have to first make some and then clear out whatever's in our one and only metallurgical infuser before we can then use the resource we want to use. And the same is true with the refined obsidian as well. We could take the refined obsidian dust, we can enrich that into the enriched obsidian. Is that all of the enriched obsidian we have? It's not. We actually have some more in the system. And again, we could throw those into here. And so now we just have kind of all of these ready to go. And it's just a case of using whichever one it is that we need for any particular recipe. The only downside to doing it this way, of course, is that we now have to make multiple more installers. Not that these are very expensive. The slightly more expensive part, of course, is making multiple of the speed and energy upgrades to make them all as fast as the bottom one. But I do think in the long run, this is going to make life a fair bit easier. The final little thing here, though, that I might do is I might also look at automating osmium. I think if we take one of these metallurgical infusers and move it over to here, I think we could fairly easily automate the production of osmium ingots. All we'd have to do is get another crusher, because we do need aluminum dust to make osmium. The crusher does require lava, I believe, but again, the lava now should be pretty straightforward for us to get. It should just be as simple as going to our centralized lava source. We hopefully have some backed up. We totally do. Fantastic. We'll take both of those. And then now back up here, we can get another crusher. And if we throw that down over here next to our metallurgical infuser, we can export the aluminum to the crusher to make aluminum dust. We can then use that aluminum dust in the metallurgical infuser with osmium to make the dirty osmium dust. And then if we get one more enrichment chamber, we can turn the dirty osmium dust into regular osmium dust. And then I might also make our first energized smelter as well. It's not strictly necessary. We could, if we wanted to, use another one of the compressed furnaces, or just a regular furnace would work. But at that point, we'd also have to go ahead and export fuel. Whereas if we use the energized smelter, we can just use the power that we already have to smelt our osmium dust into actual osmium. So we'll take the energized smelter, and while I'm here, let's also go ahead and get the enrichment chamber as well, which I'm assuming we can make. We definitely can. We just need to try that again. Boom and boom. Cool. And so I'm going to do a little bit of automation over here for the osmium, and then from there, we should be able to hopefully fairly easily get a large amount of these obsidian glow ingots to allow us to make the thermal evaporation plants. All right, so this actually ended up being a lot easier than I thought it would. All we've got here is a lineup of the 4 machines we just talked about with a drawer at the end. So I've gone ahead and placed this pipe down next to the crusher. This lined up quite nicely with our pre-existing pipe. All we're going to do down here is add a new filter for the aluminum ingots, and we're going to set that to white. Save. That should start sending the aluminum ingots round into the crusher, which is set to receive on the left, and then we're going to send on the right with auto eject on. That's going to go ahead and push the aluminum dust into the metallurgical infuser here. This is set to receive on the left, and it needs to be set to yellow on the top, like that. That's going to go ahead and receive the osmium from the final draw. So the osmium is kind of looped back around and placed into the tank on the left. That is going to hold 64 osmium. That's completely fine. Over here, these, of course, all do need power, which actually might be the only bit of this that's tricky, because there is a yellow pipe kind of right there for the crusher, which does make things a little tricky, because ideally we'd want to kind of run the power, I guess, just like this to all of these machines. But of course, that crusher there just had to be a little bit awkward. We can tweak it, I guess. We could put a pipe down here, make sure it doesn't connect to that, change it again to yellow, which I believe is the color of the pipe that we have down, and then just put a pipe here, like that. I think that should work. I'll disconnect that, because I'm assuming that doesn't need to be connected, and then we can get rid of this pipe here. That should still continue to send the nickel round to this, so long as the top set to input, which it is. And so if we just go ahead and kind of pop this off, we can throw down our power cable. Then it's going to go ahead and start crushing the aluminum into aluminum dust. Over here, it's going to go ahead and turn that aluminum dust into dirty osmium. That then gets pushed along into the enrichment chamber, which turns that dirty osmium into the regular osmium dust, and then that pushes it over into the energized smelter, which turns the regular osmium dust into osmium ingots. And the final thing we need to do is just go ahead and turn off the sounds of some of these machines, because they are kind of loud and a little bit screechy. And so eventually, as this runs, we should back up on 64 osmium. Of course, if it's not coming in fast enough, we could always look at adding some speed and energy upgrades to all of these machines at some point in the future. And I did go ahead and make the decision not to use the factory that we had for this setup, kind of for the same reason that I'm regretting using a factory over here. Over here, we're going to back up on multiple stacks of these purified coal blocks before we actually start to see any coal available to the system, which I don't think is ideal. So I do think at some point we're probably going to also end up swapping this out for a regular purification chamber as well. And so in general, I think for setups like this, where the whole point is to back up on a certain number of items, it's not really worth using the factory versions. I think the factory versions are better saved for things that either need to be really fast or that are just kind of part of our general purpose lineup. And so now that we have osmium coming in automatically, I'm going to go ahead and use that osmium in the making of the refined obsidian and the making of the refined glowstone, which we can then of course use to make the obsidian glow ingots. And we're going to keep doing that until we have enough to make the reinforced machine casing over here. And I guess until we have enough reinforced machine casing to start making some of these thermal evaporation blocks. Okay, so I've made a stack of both refined obsidian and refined glowstone. I say I've made a stack. We are kind of right at the tail end of our stack of refined obsidian dust. We just need more obsidian, which is coming in slowly but surely from our setup here. Again, we could make it faster, but I think right now we're actively using the obsidian, so it's not backing up. But once we start working on other stuff, I think the obsidian is going to back up quite nicely. We're going to have loads of it ready to go, and we're not really going to feel how slow this setup really is. And so over here, we have actually a decent amount of obsidian glow ingots now. I split the craft over 2 of these because it is actually quite slow, and I also made some more of these advanced Technium machine frames to speed the whole process up. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the rest of these back in here, because I think 56 is actually probably enough for us to get going. And so now we can pivot over and look at using the calculation processes here to make more teleportation cores. I'm going to make a bunch of them. We are still missing more atomic alloys. Those are not too difficult for us to make actually at this point. We do still have more obsidian, and we actually have more refined obsidian, so we can of course continue to enrich that. We can continue to enrich diamonds to turn our regular infused alloys into the reinforced alloys, and then in here we can turn those reinforced alloys of course into the atomic alloys using that infusing factory. And so these are actually not too bad at all. And then from there of course all we have to do is crush all of those over in here like this, and that's going to get us more of the dimensional dust. And then of course the wooden scaffolding is just wood. I have been periodically putting silver dust into here to get even more gold, just in case we need that at some point in the not so distant future. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and make some more wooden scaffolding, and we should hopefully be able to start making these thermal evaporation blocks just as soon as these are done. And there we go, we have our first stack of reinforced machine casing, and we of course have more coming in here from the extra resources. So now, let's take our first stack and see about making some of these thermal evaporation blocks. The good news is that we do get 4 of these thermal evaporation blocks for every reinforced machine casing. With a little bit of steel, we do have 1,337 nice steel available in the system, and so we have more than enough to start making a decent amount of these casings. And as we saw earlier in the quest book, this is kind of like, initially at least, a 4x4x3 multi-block. 3 tall, 4x4 in terms of its footprint. We do also need to make a controller here. This is made with some more advanced control circuits and an energy tablet. The energy tablet does require some infused alloy, and I did actually just use all of my infused alloys making more speed upgrades. The good news is, though, that now over here, some of these machines should be a bit faster. I did also make some more energy upgrades as well, and so now more of these machines have energy upgrades in them, just so that we don't have to spend quite as much time moving the energy upgrades around as we move forward. Boom and boom. Once we have the energy tablet, we should be pretty much good to go. We just need a single pane of glass, and boom. Again, we are technically going to need 4 of these, I guess, so we might as well see if we can make 3 more, which we totally can. Perfect. And then from there, we also need at least 4 of these thermal evaporation valves, but I think in reality, we're going to need 8, maybe more as well. So let's see. We'll make 2 to start with, and you'll see why in a second, because what we'll do is we'll build the first multi-block, and then from there we'll go ahead and build the rest of them. So down here, let's get rid of our dirt, I think. Actually, I might build them this way as opposed to this way. So if we start over in this corner here, and we do 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, we can also grab our construction stick and do something like this to go not like that. If you do that, there is a keybind. If I go category and construction sticks, there is an undo. I've set mine to keypad 7. You set that keybind, you then hold that button, and then right click, and it gets rid of the whatever you just did last. Just a tip there. Unfortunately, it looks like the stick isn't going to work on this. That is completely fine. We can throw down the 4x4 manually, like this. This is a hollow multi-block, so then the next 2 levels look something like this. And of course, you do have to put the controller down. In the multi-block description, it showed the controller here, although I think it can really go almost anywhere inside of the multi-block. And then the valves here do also kind of go almost anywhere in the multi-block, so long as it's not in the corners, I think. So I think they do have to go in the middle. I'll put them here and here for now. And then we are just missing 1 singular thermal evaporation block to get this show on the road. Do we have enough machine casing? Look at that, another 60. Nice. To make this happen. I think we totally do. Perfect. And so now back down here, if we throw this down, we should see that come online, and the particles mean we have a working multi-block. So the next thing we are going to need is kind of twofold. First of all, it looks like I didn't actually pull the energy tablet out like this to complete that quest. Perfect, there we go. The next thing we're going to need is this guy here, the resistive heater. This is an interesting little machine that allows you to choose how much power it uses. The reason for that is that the higher the power usage, the higher the heat output. So basically, down here, we're going to put this resistive heater down onto the side of one of these thermal evaporation valves. In here, by default, it's set to 40 redstone flux per tick, and if we were to give this some power, which of course we're going to do with our universal cable, the power, by the way, does have to go into one of these green sides. You can't do it in the bottom or the other side. It has to go, for example, like this, into that side. So I'm going to run that, of course, over to our nearest power line, and in here, if I said 100 FE and click tick, it would increase the temperature that the resistive heater gets to, thus increasing the temperature of the thermal evaporation plant. And the temperature determines the speed at which the resources are made. So for example, right here, you'll see that at a temperature of 26.85, the production is 0. If we were to increase the temperature, it would increase the number of millibuckets per tick of water that is converted into hot water. And that's the whole purpose of this other valve, by the way. This valve is going to be the valve that receives the water. And so if we get another one of these red XNet connectors, and we do a quick /back, we can put this down here. If you want to disconnect a side, by the way, it doesn't matter that this is connected, but if you want it to not connect, you can just right click and then click on the button underneath the machine you don't want it to connect to, like this, and now it's disconnected. Nice. And so I'm going to go ahead and run XNet cable and power cable to both of these, and then we should be able to get this producing hot water. Okay, so a little bit of an issue there that I'll talk about in just a second, but we do now have the thermal evaporation valve showing up on here, and so if we set this to insert, it should start to receive water from our general water source, and it is, and you can see it's kind of very quickly turning that into hot water via the use of the temperature that's in here. And right now it's definitely hot enough because it's turning the water into hot water faster than we can even send the water out, and so for now, this is pretty good. The problem I run into is that I used the pipe connector to place down XNet cable to go from here round to the other connection that we already had, and apparently, at least for now, I'm on version 15.7, I think, of the pack, that just like doesn't work. So over here, I've put down a connector, and I've called it some random gibberish. If I put down the pipes manually, the chest shows up. Here's our gibberish chest. If I break those pipes, though, and place them down with the pipe connector, like this, and like this, and like this, it just doesn't show up inside of the connector. So for now, I would recommend using the manual method of placing down the XNet cables, because if you do it with the pipe placer, you have to break them all and replace them all anyway for it to actually work, for now at least. That might change, and I'm assuming it'll get fixed at some point, but currently, for whatever reason, that doesn't work, so That caused us quite a bit of a headache trying to figure out why that didn't work. But essentially, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and build another thermal evaporation plant next to this one. To do that, we are also going to need to get another one of these valves, because we also need a valve to extract from one thermal evaporation plant into another thermal evaporation plant. So for that, I do need another one of these guys, the advanced control circuits. So over here, let's just do one of these. As soon as we make even more of the thermal evaporation blocks, I'll make a full stack of those because we're going to need it. Apparently, you can also use structural glass, which is cheaper here, in the making of the thermal evaporation plant. I'm not quite sure which of these blocks we can replace with structural glass. My default assumption is that we can maybe break like these ones and kind of have structural glass here. That totally works. I'm assuming that the edges have to be made of block though, so I'm assuming that this doesn't work. Never mind, that totally does work. Does the edge work? There's no way the edge works. No, so the edges do have to be made of thermal evaporation block like that, but it is a little cheaper to use structural glass here because structural glass just requires regular glass, whereas the thermal evaporation blocks require the reinforced machine casing. And so we can kind of replace all of these middle blocks here that are not the controller or the valve with structural glass, and that's just going to make it a little cheaper for us to build the next 3 of these. All right, so we've got the outline of all of the thermal evaporation multi-blocks down. We got 4 of them down. One thing we can do here is we can kind of move the resistive heater to kind of make better use of it. Now, one problem we are running into quite regularly, especially when I leave the floor open like this and I'm a fool and I don't put facades down, is that some of my items are falling into the abyss pretty regularly. People have been suggesting that we should maybe look at getting the magnet upgrade for our armor to allow us to kind of attract any items that we drop so that we don't just drop them into the abyss. Now, to make the magnet upgrade, it says that we need 540 millibuckets of molten gold plus 6 iron. I actually don't know how that's going to work. Let me grab the gold that we have here. We should also have some more gold over in here as well. We totally do. Let me go and give that a quick melt. You get 90 millibuckets per gold ingot, so I think we should only need 6 to make this magnet upgrade. Of course, if we wanted a higher tier of the magnet upgrade, we would need even more. But if I wanted to, for example, make my leggings here magnetic, we do currently just have some molten redstone backing up on there. Thankfully, I have been carrying around my fluid movers for just such an occasion, so we can do one of these and let the gold in. Oh, I see. And then we just put the iron in that middle slot. That makes a lot of sense. So the iron is just going to go in right about there. That should apply level 1 magnetism just as soon as we level up our leggings, because they currently are only able to hold 1 enchantment. That's fine. If we take some stuff out there, that should give that enough experience. It does to level it up, and so now we can put those back in, and that should give it magnetism level 1. I have no idea how strong magnetism level 1 is going to be. Let's have a look. So if I put these back on, and I now drop some items on the floor, it's not great. You've got to be real close to get that. So we could probably do with increasing the level of that magnetism real fast to allow us to actually use it. For now, though, what I was saying down here is that what you can do is you can go ahead and share the resistive heater. So if, for example, I were to put down all of my valves actually, right about here. So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, we can do 2 things. We can use one of these to move the hot water from the first multi-block into the second multi-block, especially if we go ahead and do one of these. So right here, the hot water is being made. We can use our wrench, make sure it's not in wrench mode, to extract the hot water like that into the second thermal evaporation plant. Then, if we go ahead and get another resistive heater, and while we're here, we might as well make 2 of these if we can, because we're going to need at least 2 of them. 1, 2, and as soon as we get another energy tablet, which of course requires that gold that we've just spent. Thankfully, there is a little bit more in here. Let's throw you in there. Let's get 2 more energy tablets, just as soon as we grab even more infused alloy, which we also have ready to go. Boom, boom, and boom. That should get us 2 resistive heaters, and the idea here is that we can put those down right here, like this, and ideally, I guess we want to kind of rotate that. You can do that by setting the wrench to rotate, by the way, like this. And then once that's rotated the right way, then we can do something like this. I will get rid of these pipes here. And we'll run that in the ground just to make it look that a little bit nicer, like that. But now the resistive heater is shared between both of these thermal evaporation plants, and they both get the benefit of the heat. So we can once again set that to 100, tick. And now over here, we should see the hot water getting turned into the brine. Now the ratio here is much worse. So it does take, I think, 8 millibuckets of hot water to make 1 millibucket of brine. And so unlike the water to hot water, which is 1-to-1, the hot water to brine is 8-to-1. So we're going to get much less brine, but then we could do the same thing going forward as well. So I've left a bigger gap here because we don't need a smaller gap here. On this side, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to put another resistive heater down right about here, just as soon as we put down our 4 valves. Perfect, on each one. Then we'll put the resistive heater back, like that. We'll rotate it, again, using the rotate option. We'll connect that up to power. We'll, of course, use our basic mechanical pipe here to extract from one to the other. And we're going to do the same here as well. We need a valve for output, so we'll put one here and one here, and then we're going to use another pipe like this to extract the brine over into the next thermal evaporation plant, like so, and that's obviously going to do the same here. We'll set that to extract, and then finally, we would extract out of the final thermal evaporation plant, and that is going to be the sulfur. And so this should, in theory, be the full chain of resources. What we might end up doing is getting multiple tanks and kind of putting those down between the thermal evaporation plants, because as we saw earlier, we do need the brine, we do need the lithium, and we do need the sulfur. So we need all of the liquids at all of the stages. It's not just a case of needing the sulfur at the end. And so we could do with getting a tank for each one and kind of intercepting it so that we back up on each liquid, connect all of those up to the XNet system, and then we can use them later on wherever they're needed. For example, right here, if we want to make fluorite dust, that's made in the dimensional infuser with brine, and that's it. Nothing else is required. And so if we could steal a bucket of brine, which we might actually be able to do here. Do I have a bucket in there? Of course I don't. That would have been far too easy. Do we have a bucket in here? We do. Fantastic. What we should be able to do is throw down the tanks, like I said, at these 3 points. I actually don't know if we need the hot water. If we do, we could go ahead and set that up at some point later. For now, I'm just going to turn all the hot water into brine. Once we have a little bit of brine, ideally enough to get into a bucket here, we could look at running that up to our dimensional infuser and using it to actually produce the fluorite dust, which I'm assuming is going to be used to make this fluorite, which is probably used, I was going to say in the making of the elite technium, but it looks like that's not the case. I'm actually not entirely certain what we need that for. Oh, we need it for the chemical crystallizer, sure, which is where we actually use the lithium as well. That is fine. Let me go ahead and run some power up to this guy to make sure that is actually working. Helps if you do that in the right place, Isaac. Get rid of you and do a quick one of these instead. Perfect. That should now be working. We'll also set that to 100 for now. We can always tweak those in the future if they need tweaking. Again, for now, this is going to fill up. We can take you. Perfect. And back up on the surface, if I put that into our dimensional infuser, hopefully, that's just going to make us a fluorite. It totally does. Nice. And we should get quite a few fluorite from that as well. And from there, we just need to run that through the enrichment chamber right about here to actually get the regular fluorite crystal. Nice. That's another quest complete. And we should actually be able, I think, to make this chemical crystallizer because we can make refined obsidian ingots from the refined obsidian dust we have. We do have what it takes to make 2 more ultimate control circuits. I think we actually have potentially some teleportation cores spare, although I might have crushed them all. Even if we don't have any spare, we did make way too many of the calculation processes, and so it really shouldn't be too difficult for us to get even more of those teleportation cores to actually make the chemical crystallizer, and then we can start looking at using the lithium to make lithium dust. And a couple of ultimate control circuits later, I think we should be pretty much good to go here. We just need some more steel gears, which is also not going to be a problem. Let me swap out this. Earlier I was making more wires to make more universal cable. That's fine. We can do one of these, and we can do one of these. Nice. That's going to get us more steel gears. We only need the one for now, but we might as well leave more cooking because we're definitely going to need more advanced Technium machine frames. And boom, that gets us or it almost gets us our chemical crystallizer. Nice. So this guy, for now, I guess we'll also place down right about here. And initially, we're going to use this to turn some of our lithium into lithium dust. down. So let me take this. Then we'll drop that in here. Although this is a liquid, and I believe that the chemical crystallizer requires it in gas form, so it's actually possible that we might need a rotary condensator first. This is another machine from Mechanism that is able to turn liquids into gases and vice versa. It looks like we are missing 1 gold if we want that to happen. We still are periodically putting more and more silver dust into our dimensional infuser, so we still do have more gold coming in. And then as far as osmium is concerned, I see we needed some osmium for the chemical tank here. We do have osmium ready. We just need to throw down another inventory connector because right now the osmium is over here. So if I do one of these, we can throw down an inventory pipe like this and a connector like that. Cool. That should bring the osmium online, and it also means we could probably get rid of the inventory connectors under the glowstone and the Certus quartz now because they're kind of redundant. But if we do a quick one of these, boom and boom, we're going to get ourselves a rotary condensator. Did I not just make a chemical tank? So my, oh gosh, that's not good. That's not good. Okay. So my system has placed my chemical tank. Oh, I bet it's placed it into the electrolytic separator. Where in the world is the electrolytic separator? It's right here. Okay, so, right. Okay. Again, this is kind of part of the problem with the inventory connectors. It's taken both of the chemical tanks and it's placed them into the electrolytic separator, which is connected through the chemical injection chamber, through the drawer. Right, okay, that's not ideal. Let me make sure, I guess, that the bottom of this is like not set to input on anything. If I turn all of those off, I'm hopeful that then if I put these back in, they don't end up in here. They have still ended up in there. That's not good at all. Okay, well, for now, we can go ahead and do this to craft our rotary condensator. The good news is that it's really only chemical tanks that can go in there, but that's not ideal. We might have to, like, shimmy this back by one so that the inventory connector that we have, like, under here and here isn't connected to the electrolytic separator, so things can't get placed in. For now, though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my rotary condensator. Let's put that down, I guess, like, right here. Like this, because then we're going to place the... Oh, wait, that's bizarre as well. It's gone ahead and... Okay. It's used the hydrogen that was inside of the hydrogen tank that we used to make the rotary condensator, and it's put that inside the machine. That's some commitment, but we're going to change this back to decondensating. So we're turning the liquid back into a gas, and then I guess we could do with maybe making another tank so that we can just kind of hold that gas temporarily. Let me take this. Let me put the tank in here, and that's going to suck all the hydrogen out of this machine, and then we can take our liquid lithium here and turn that into the gas lithium, which is then going to make its way over into the chemical crystallizer because this apparently is set to auto-eject by default. And so now in here, that gaseous lithium is going to get turned into lithium dust, which is going to actually complete the quest for us. Okay, that took a bit more effort than I thought it would, but that's fine. And also, yes, this is indeed a elite technium part, so we do have to kind of automate this process right here of making the lithium dust for the elite technium. Next up here, the sulfur is just made by doing the same thing with sulfuric acid. It is the same setup where the liquid that we get is liquid sulfuric acid, and we've got a very small amount of it in here because, of course, a lot of the liquid is being stored in here, but this is making liquid sulfuric acid. We need to get another rotary condensator to turn it into the gas version, and then we can use the chemical crystallizer to turn it into actual sulfur. And then from there, going further down, we need to get fluix crystals, for one, to make the matter condenser, but we also need them if we ever want to make an applied energistics 2 system, because if we go back in the quest line, over here there is a quest to make an ME controller, but to do it we need fluix crystals. And in this pack, those fluix crystals are first made in an arc furnace, which is a giant 5x5x5 multi-block structure from Immersive Engineering, which requires graphite electrodes. The graphite electrodes are right here. To make these, we have to use hop graphite dust. The hop graphite dust here is made in another multi-block structure, the industrial squeezer, with raw hop graphite dust, which requires coke dust and sulfur. The coke dust is just coal coke crushed. We have been making some coal coke over in one of our coke ovens. We've got 14 here. The reason we were doing that is that we needed coal coke to make the cobblestone melters for our melting setup downstairs. Over here, we're actually backing up on blocks of coal, which is good. The reason we're backing up on blocks of coal, though, is because we do not have oxygen coming in, which means we're not getting enough flint, which is surprising. Do we just not have any flint? We do have flint. We've got 2048 flint, which makes me think that there's a different problem somewhere here, because the flint should be being sent around into here. The problem here is that the bank was not set to input when I rearranged the setup, so no flint has gone in since I moved it around, but there was enough flint in there to last quite a while. That actually kind of works out well for us, because it means we can take some of these blocks of coal here and actually use them to make coal coke. In fact, you can put blocks of coal in the coke oven to make blocks of coal coke, which you can then downcraft after the fact. So I'm going to take a full stack of these and just whack them in there. That's going to make us a ton of coal coke, hopefully way more than we're actually going to need. And back over here, this is now back online and is back making more diamonds for us as well, which is good. Over here, we've got lapis on the ground, but that's fine. It's also kind of intended functionality. So let's see here. If we want to progress forward, we do need to get sulfur, which we're working on. Down here, I did have to go ahead and increase the power usage quite a bit on this resistive heater. We've currently got it using 1,000 redstone flux per tick to convert the water. The problem now actually seems to be that the water is just not coming in fast enough, I guess. Like, we are getting the sulfur, but just real slow. Up here, we are still backing up on water, so we're still pumping the water fast enough. We're just not moving it, I don't think, fast enough with XNet, and so it could actually be worth investing in one of the advanced connectors to allow us to move that water even faster. So if we temporarily steal this from here and do a quick /home, do we have what it takes to upgrade that to advanced? I think we do. It's a nickel gear and a block of nickel. The block of nickel, obviously super easy, and then the nickel gear should just be as simple as throwing nickel into there, and in fact we already have a few of those ready to go as well. So can I upgrade you? I totally can. So now back down here, if we replace this, I am not sure if we have to reconfigure it. We totally do, that's fine. So up here, let's just reset this to insert water, and then it's at that point, Isaac, that you realize that I think it's actually the connector on here that we need to upgrade to advanced, not the connector that's sending the water that needs to be upgraded to advanced. The good news is that we can do both. Let me do another block of nickel, and then let's do another advanced connector, like that. And then back down here, can I replace you with you? I totally can. So let's make sure that this is still set to extract. And you'll see here now that we can change the number of ticks per operation. By default, it's set to 20, so it's going to do 1 operation per second. I believe now that we can reduce that down to 10. So we can now do 2 operations per second, which is good. Let me see here. Are we still... This is now empty, which is probably a good sign. I'm surprised this is not empty. I was kind of hoping it would start to empty out. We can, of course, look at using some of our speed upgrades to make the pump faster. Temporarily, I will steal the speed upgrades out of here. I'm also going to take the energy upgrades as well whilst we're at it. And let's do just a full upgrade. Let's do this and this. So that should now be producing water way faster, like way faster than we actually need it to be produced. And then hopefully we do see water coming down here as well a fair bit faster. It is coming in quicker, but not really as quick as I would like. So I don't think this is working as intended. In here, you'll see that the basic connector has a maximum rate of 1,000 millibuckets, presumably per second, whereas the advanced connector here, which we now have on both the water source and on the thermal evaporation valve, both of these have a maximum of 5,000. I believe setting it to 0 sets it to 5,000 by default. I will set it to 5,000 just in case that is our problem. But this tank is still full, and so I think it's not being moved over fast enough, or at all, really. If I come and look over here as well, it's... Oh, no, this is moving it over. That actually might be working now. A second ago, that wasn't. So maybe we do need to set it to 5,000. It might default to 1,000, potentially, if you don't specify. But now that we've set it to 5,000 on both the extract and the insert, this is moving faster, and you'll see we're processing 180 millibuckets per tick, which, don't forget, we're only moving every 10 ticks with the XNet system. And so over the course of 10 ticks, that would be 1,800 millibuckets, which should be fine. We should be moving 5,000. We should be turning 1,800 in that time. And so we should be able to gain water in here, which is what's happening. So this is working now, which is good. And you can see at this point that if we wanted to, we'd have to just increase the power usage here even higher. Like 1,500 would give us even more production, presumably. As soon as that goes hotter, it should produce even more hot water. It's possible, though, that we just might want to set up a multiple of these thermal evaporation plants. It looks like that actually hasn't changed anything, but that could be due to the fact, actually, that our chamber is not tall enough. If we grab some more evaporation blocks and do a quick slash back, the fact that increasing the temperature didn't increase the production speed makes me think that we actually need to get more height to our thermal evaporation plant, not more heat. So if I go ahead and add like 2 more blocks all around like this, is that going to increase the production rate? It is. It's gone up to 300. Nice. Okay, so that is definitely the problem there. The problem is definitely the height. Now you'll see we're backing up in here. The reason for that is that the basic mechanical pipes can only pump 250 millibuckets per tick, and we're producing 300. So if we wanted to make this faster, we would have to upgrade these to the next tier. This can pump 4 times as much, 1,000 millibuckets per tick, which is definitely more than enough. So let's go ahead and quickly swap this out like so. And of course, we'll set that to extract again. That should now be emptying this out. It is. Over here, this is doing just fine. So now, I do wonder if we should go even taller. I still don't know if it's heat that's the problem, the bottleneck, or if it's just the height of our plant. Let me add 1 more level here. We have just enough glass to make that happen. That has still increased it. Interesting. So I guess, let me try lowering that back to 1,000. Does that actually lower it? It doesn't. So we are bottlenecked currently by height and not heat. You'll see we can go down to 500, and it's still hot enough to convert. So I guess we should probably go make way more structural glass, which is the easier part, thankfully, and way more of these thermal evaporation blocks as well. Nowhere near as many, of course, because we don't need quite that many to make it taller. It looks like we're also kind of out of glass, of all things, which is surprising. I thought we had a nice backlog of glass, but I think that we are running into a problem over here where we're not getting enough lava on either of these, which is, again, kind of why we set up that centralized lava source. So I guess what we should also probably do here is do away with this guy and instead throw down 2 more XNet connectors, 1 on each of the simple tanks, and then just use XNet to export the lava over here as opposed to trying to make it at the tanks. Alright, so I've gone ahead and made this taller, and you'll see now our usage is higher. We are using 1,500 redstone flux per tick, but this is working. We're at 400 millibuckets per tick. Over here, I don't actually think any of these other ones need to be any bigger, at least not just yet, because it looks like the production, when it says production millibuckets per tick, that's the production of the output from the thermal evaporation plant. So right here, it's the brine. And the brine, as we saw earlier, is an 8-to-1 recipe. So I'm assuming that when it says production is 180 millibuckets per tick, that means we're able to produce 180 millibuckets of brine per tick, which would mean because it requires 8 millibuckets of water to make 1 millibucket of brine, that we're able to process 1,440 millibuckets of hot water per tick, so way more than we're actually producing because we're only producing 400, which means we really don't need to make these 3 any taller. It's just the first one that needs to be super tall, and then the rest are kind of already just not receiving the liquids fast enough. The good news is, in the time it took us to do that, we have backed up on brine, we have backed up on lithium, and we're now backing up on the sulfuric acid as well. And so, up here, I did also go ahead and connect those tanks up over there to the XNet system, so we're now sending lava to both of these automatically. You'll see they're both full, which is good. We're making the glass much faster than we were previously. But I guess what we want to do now is kind of the same thing that we just did for lithium. We could do with grabbing a bucket so we can steal some of that sulfur from downstairs. Of course, really this does need to be automated, but for now, if we just steal a bucket of this, take it back up, we can drop that into the rotary condensator, like so. That's going to turn it into sulfuric acid from liquid sulfuric acid, and then in here that should turn it into actual sulfur once we get to 100 millibuckets. So we should get 10 sulfur from this setup. And then I guess next time we're going to take a look at making more of the multi-blocks from immersive engineering so that we can start taking this coal coke here. We can, of course, crush it right now using the crusher that we have over here. That's going to make us the crushed coal coke, but we then need to take that and run it through the squeezer and the arc furnace to take it even further and allow us to actually look at making the Fluix crystals. That shouldn't be too difficult. I don't think that the industrial squeezer is particularly hard to make. Most of this we have made before and might already have in the system. And then the same's kind of true, I think, for the bottling machine here. If we need this, it's also pretty straightforward. And then the arc furnace is the hardest of the lot, but it does have a placer, and as well as also just kind of more of the same things. It's a lot of steel that we do already have, more of these reinforced blast bricks that we can make super easily. There's nothing here that I'm super worried about making. And so next time, I think we should be able to get Fluix. That's going to give us the option, if we want it, to start converting our simple storage system into an applied energistics 2 system, which is definitely going to be a good idea in the long run. Whether or not we want to do it right away is a different question. And then finally, once we have fluics, we can make matter condensers, which allows us to make matter balls, which is going to allow us to actually craft the elite Technium machine. That, of course, is its own whole multi-block, just like the previous 2 tiers of machine. And then, of course, we have to actually look at making all of this stuff, which I don't think is going to be too bad. Gold gears are going to be a little tricky because gold's a bit pricey, but the actual process of making them into gears is easy enough. The same is true with osmium rods. We already have osmium automated. Lithium dust is surprisingly easy to automate. We just have to send the liquid lithium from downstairs into the rotary condensator, and then it's kind of just done automatically. As for the advanced technium we already have, the diamond plates are just diamonds turned into plates. Super straightforward. The block of black quartz is not too bad either. We've seen that we can make black quartz from Certus quartz, which we're already automating. The dimensional ores are really, I think, the only tricky bit left. We've also not made skystone yet, so we're going to have to figure out how that's done. I do see that there is a quest for it in the dimensional ores quest line. It's right here. I'm assuming, therefore, that we make it in the dimensional infuser. We do. We might need to get another dimensional infuser, but that shouldn't be too difficult. And so I think it's not going to be too bad, famous last words, to make this elite Technium ingot. The only slightly tricky bit might be the dimensional ores. I believe that we can make those using another multi-block, that being this dimensional ore extractor here, that's going to allow us to kind of passively generate dimensional ores at the cost of power. Speaking of power, I do think that we are going to have to massively increase the number of biogenerators that we have available. The 3,200 redstone flux per tick that we're currently generating was a lot a few episodes ago, but with just the one heater here using 1,500, and with, you know, mechanism machines regularly using over 1,000, we're very quickly going to start to run out of power there. And it's at that point that we're also probably going to have to start looking at upgrading all of the power cables around the base, because right now the basic universal cables here can only move 3,200 redstone flux per tick. And so if we want to increase the power that we're producing, we're also going to have to increase our tier of universal cable. Thankfully, it's a big jump. Going from basic to advanced takes you from 3,000 up to 50,000, which should be enough for quite a while to come. And so we'll also probably look at the start of the next stream at adding more biogenerators, which should be pretty straightforward. I think we're still making the biofuel way faster than we need it, and so I think it would be very easy for us to double up, maybe even more, the number of biogenerators that we have to produce, 6 to 10,000 redstone flux per tick, and use that to power things like our resistive heaters going forward. And of course, the arc furnace is also a massive multi-block that I believe also usually requires a ton of power, unless that has been tweaked, but that is going to have to wait for the next episode, because I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Techopolis 3 there.